this.
In an animated 1987 TV special, this space-age family traveled back in time to meet the Flintstones. The correct response is the Jetsons. In the pilot for this 60s sitcom, Jed and Jethro first meet Mr. Drysdale when he comes to get them out of jail. We're talking about the Beverly Hillbillies. You get to pick. The 1973 TV season gave us Richard Roundtree as this super cool private eye he'd played on film. Here's what we wanted. Shaft. So, according to his theme song, Mr. This will never speak unless he has something to say. Here's what we were looking for. Ed. Player one. In the 50s, this movie Tarzan was still hanging out with a chimp, but he wore more than a loincloth as TV's Jungle Jim. The correct response is Johnny Weissmuller. Player one. A fresco by Raphael shows Pope Leo I pleading with this ruthless barbarian to spare Rome. Here's the correct response. Attila. Legend has it that Mark Antony's wife stabbed this orator's tongue after his death. Here's the response we were looking for. Cicero. Carved in Rome, the Pietà is the only work signed by this sculptor. We're talking about Michelangelo. Player in one. Rome's Cerasi Chapel is Caravaggio's painting of the conversion of this saint. Here's the correct response. Paul. Please pick again. Here's Kelly.
This giant amphitheater was one of the great achievements of Roman art.
Here's the response we were looking for. The Colosseum. Player Dream one. When you're feeling blue. Dream. That's the thing to do. Dream. Here's what we were looking for. A verb. You again. Rodney Dangerfield said, "When I was born, I was so ugly, the doctor slapped my mother." Ugly. We're talking about an adjective. I killed a man in Reno just to watch him die. Here's the correct response. A preposition. Player we know one. You're very smart, but are you smart enough to know? Very. Here's the correct response. An adverb. Player so one. When you're happy, hooray, or sad, aw, or frightened, eek, or mad, rats. Hooray, aw, eek, rats. Here's what we wanted. Interjections. Please surf the Internet Hostel or the Marriott Hostel. Note the lack of an extra R and T in Marriott. In this Bulgarian capital. The correct response is Sofia. You get... And so, hell yeah! The Daily Double. And you're in the lead. So, all right, here's your clue. It's off to the Hans Brinker Budget Hotel or Dirty Nellie's Inn. Sounds inviting. In this major European city. Here's the correct response. Amsterdam. You again. Enjoy the Sleep in Heaven Youth Hostel or the Newhound Boat Hostel in this capital of Denmark. Here's what we were looking for. Copenhagen. We return to, I'm sure the Red Bus Hostel is fine, but the Mellow Mood Central Hostel caught my eye in this capital of Hungary. The correct response is Budapest. Do the Funky Chicken Hostel or the Butterfly Villa Hostel in this Romanian capital. Here's the response we were looking for. Bucharest. Player one. In earlier days, this evil-sounding chocolate cake was colored with red food dye. We're talking about Devil's Food Cake. So, the Cheesecake Factory has put its famous cream cheese icing on this other type of cake. Here's what we wanted. Carrot cake. Player one. Schwarzwälder Kirschtorte is known by this colorful name in English. Here's the correct response. Black Forest cake. Please. This aluminum cake pan that sounds like a baseball play was invented by H. David Dahlquist in the early 1950s. Here's the correct response. Bunt. As its name suggests, a trompe-l'oeil cake is one designed to deceive this sense. Here's the correct response. Sight. Choose again, player one. These animals of the order Chiroptera are the only mammals that can truly fly. Here's the response we were looking for. Bats. So this feisty Thai fish blows sticky bubbles to make a nest, then puts the eggs in its mouth and blows them in the nest. Here's what we wanted. Fighting fish. Muskrats and wood rats belong to this order of mammals. The correct response is Rodentia. Player one. Let's take it over to Kelly.
If you see one of these under the sea, look but don't touch. The spines can be poisonous.
Here's what we were looking for. The sea urchin. Here's the $1,000 clue for you. Fruit and lizards, yum, are favorite foods of the coati, also known by this longer name. We're talking about the coatimundi. The Double Jeopardy round will begin right after this. Let's get back. In the wild in Mexico, this Christmas plant, Euphorbia pulcherrima, may grow to a height of 15 feet. Here's the response we were looking for. The poinsettia. The ponderosa is one of the most widely distributed American species of this conifer. We're talking about the pine. Player one. And hell yeah! One of the daily doubles. And here is your clue. Aethusa sinapium is known as poison or fools this herb. Don't put it on your potatoes. Here's the correct response. Parsley. Here's Kelly with the clue.
The moss seen here, also called vegetable horsehair, is best known by this national name.
Here's what we wanted. Spanish moss. Player
This
one. Nova Scotia man founded a famous line of ships in 1838. Here's what we were looking for. Samuel Cunard. You again. A variety of this state tree of Mississippi is the cucumber tree, which gets its name from the shape of its fruits. Here's the correct response. The magnolia. Here's Kelly from our Clue Crew with the clue.
This mariner's 16th century explorations of the Gulf of St. Lawrence laid the basis for French claims to Canada.
The correct response is Jacques Cartier. Co-discoverer of this pancreatic hormone, Ontario's Frederick Banting won a 1923 Nobel Prize. Here's what we were looking for. Insulin. In 1917 and 1918, Ontario's Billy Bishop claimed 72 aerial victories as an ace in this war. Here's the correct response. World War I. Toronto-born journalist Morley Safer began co-hosting this TV news magazine way back in 1970. Here's what we wanted. 60 Minutes. Player one. In 1870, Congress granted her an annual pension of $3,000. Call her Sugar, Mama, or simply your wife. Here's the correct response is Mary Lincoln. Player one. You said of this general, I can't spare this man, he fights. He sure seems to be enjoying the green room. Here's the response we were looking for. Ulysses Grant. So, in 1860, he got 12 electoral votes, but you got the job. Feel free to debate. We're talking about Stephen Douglas. You said if this general is not using the army, I should like to borrow it for a while. Say hello to... Here's the correct response. George McClellan.
Player 1.
Secretary of War for Franklin Pierce. Some called him Mr. President, though certainly not you. Say hello to... Here's the correct response. Jefferson Davis. You again, Player 1. It precedes minutes in the title of a popular Sunday night TV news program. Here's the correct response. 60.
Player 1.
Highest number you can throw with just one standard die. Here's what we wanted. 6. Select again. Kelly will present this clue.
In target archery, an arrow that hits the outer white ring is worth 1 point. The inner blue scores 6, and a shot in the center yellow scores this many.
The correct response is 10.
Player 1.
Of 80, 800, or 1800, the approximate length in miles of the Trans-Alaska Pipeline. We're talking about 800.
Player
Barack
1.
Obama is officially listed as this number U.S. president. Here's the response we were looking for. 44.
Player 1.
Aerosmith and the Age of Innocence. Here's what we were looking for. The 1920s. Please. And
Hell yeah!
the second daily double. You, sorry, and the clue. The agony and the ecstasy. And you only live twice. We're talking about the 1960s. You get to pick a Jason Bateman, Will Arnett, Portia de Rossi. Here's the response we were looking for. Arrested Development. You again, Player 1. Ralph Carter, Bernadette Stanis, Jimmy Walker. Here's what we were looking for. Good Times. Justin Burfield, Eric Pear Sullivan, Frankie Muniz. Here's what we wanted. Malcolm in the Middle. We return Taron Noah Smith, Zachary Ty Bryan, Jonathan Taylor Thomas. Here's the correct response. Home Improvement. Choose again. Jodie Sweetin, Candace Cameron, Mary Kate, and Ashley Olsen. Here's the correct response. Full House.
Player 1.
Jaws and Jonathan Livingston Seagull. The correct response is the 1970s.
Player 1.
Red Storm Rising and The Prince of Tides. We're talking about the 1980s. And we'll wrap up the board with this clue. Forever Amber and The Naked and the Dead. Here's the response we were looking for. The 1940s. And we're going to take a break. We'll come back after this. Sorry, players, but no one will proceed to Final Jeopardy.